Think about the word home. You know exactly what it means. Or do you? In English, home is a building. A place. But in many languages, the concept doesn't exist the same way. Some languages have words for emotional states that English doesn't have names for at all. The German word Schadenfreude. The Japanese word mono no aware. The Portuguese word saudade. None translate exactly. Here's the thing, though. Language is not just communication. It's the architecture of reality. The language you speak shapes what you perceive. What you notice. What you think is possible. And right now, humanity is losing languages at a catastrophic rate. A language dies roughly every 2 weeks. By the end of this century, most linguists expect half of the world's 7,000 languages to be gone. If you're listening to Drift Off, you've come to the right place. Tonight we're going to explore what those languages contain. And why their disappearance is one of the greatest losses in human history. To understand what's being lost, we first have to understand what language actually does. Language is not a label system. It's a way of carving reality into categories. Different languages make different cuts. And those cuts have consequences for thought, perception, and memory. The Hopi language of the American Southwest has no grammatical tense. Past, present, and future are not separated. Hopi speakers describe events differently from English speakers. They emphasize process over time, ongoing patterns over discrete moments. The Russian language has separate words for light blue and dark blue. Russian speakers can distinguish these shades significantly faster than English speakers. Language gives you a cognitive handle on something. Without the word, the perception is blurred. The most studied example of language and perception is color. But it reveals something profound. The Piraha people of the Amazon have no words for specific colors. When shown colored chips, they describe them by reference to objects. The Barinmo people of Papua New Guinea have a single word null that covers what English calls green and blue. For them, green and blue are one category. Not because they can't see the difference. Because their language doesn't encode it. The Himba people of Namibia can quickly distinguish shades of green that look identical to English speakers. Their language has more precise green categories. When a language with those categories dies, that particular way of perceiving color, that sharpness of vision, goes with it. But perception isn't the most dramatic knowledge encoded in language. Navigation might be. The Gugu Imathir language of Australia doesn't use relative directions. No left or right. No forward or back. They use absolute geographic directions at all times. North, south, east, west. Even inside buildings. Even in dreams. Gugu Imathir speakers always know exactly which direction they're facing. Always. As an automatic cognitive operation. English speakers lose their bearings in unfamiliar buildings. Gugu Imathir speakers never do. The language trains the spatial cognition. Lose the language, lose the cognitive map. Some of the most irreplaceable knowledge encoded in language is ecological. Indigenous languages often have vocabulary for biological phenomena that Western science hasn't named. The Seri people of Mexico have a word for the specific way a cactus renza's nest indicates a nearby predator. One word. English needs 20. Many indigenous languages distinguish hundreds of plant varieties that Western botany considers the same species. Those distinctions encode which variety grows where, which resists drought, which peaks in which season. Agricultural knowledge in language. The Inuktitut language of the Arctic has hundreds of words for snow and ice conditions. Not because Inuit speakers are obsessed with snow. Because for thousands of years, knowing the precise condition of ice was the difference between survival and death. When those words disappear, the knowledge of how to read ice disappears. In a world of melting Arctic ice, we may lose this knowledge precisely when we need it most. Language shapes not just space and nature, but time itself. The Aymara people of the Andes imagine the past as being in front of them. The future is behind, unseen. This isn't metaphorical. It's grammatical. The language encodes it. And spatial gesture confirms it. The Piraha people have no number words beyond 1, 2, and many. No counting beyond 3. Piraha children cannot learn to count in the way Western children do. Their language hasn't built the cognitive scaffolding. This challenges everything we thought we knew about mathematical cognition being universal. Here's what has already been lost. And this is the part that should stay with you. The Americas alone lost an estimated 500 to 1,000 languages in the 2 centuries after European contact. Australia had over 250 distinct indigenous languages before colonization. Fewer than 20 remain in active daily use. Each of those lost languages was a unique way of perceiving reality. A unique body of ecological and cultural knowledge. Gone. We don't know what medical knowledge disappeared with the languages of the Amazon basin in the 19th century. We don't know what astronomical knowledge was encoded in the languages of Pacific Island navigators now extinct. We cannot know what we've lost because the only record was in the language itself. But here's the hopeful part. And there is one. Language revival is possible. And it's happening. Welsh was nearly extinct in the 19th century. Today it has over 800,000 speakers. Children grow up bilingual. Hebrew was effectively extinct as a spoken language for 1,500 years. A dying community made it live again. The Maori language of New Zealand fell to fewer than 1,000 fluent speakers. Immersion schools began in the 1980s. Today it's an official language with growing numbers. Every language that comes back is not just a cultural victory. It's a cognitive library restored. Grammar is not decoration. It's the skeleton of thought itself. Languages differ not just in vocabulary but in the fundamental logical structures they impose on reality. English is what linguists call an SVO language. Subject-verb-object. I ate the apple. Japanese is SOV. The verb comes last. You don't know what happened until the very end of the sentence. Yoda from Star Wars speaks in what linguists call free word order, more common in languages like Latin and Hungarian. Some languages are polysynthetic. An entire English sentence, I saw the man who was eating, can be one single word. Mohawk, Inuktitut, and many indigenous languages of the Americas are polysynthetic. The unit of meaning is not the word but the sentence word. What does it feel like to think in a polysynthetic language? Researchers believe it genuinely feels different. One of the most fascinating grammatical categories is evidentiality. Many languages require you to specify how you know what you know. In Quechua, the language of the Andes, you cannot say, it's raining, without specifying whether you see the rain, heard about it, or infer it from other signs. Tibetan has 4 evidential categories: visual evidence, non-visual sensory evidence, inference, and hearsay. Languages with grammatical evidentiality may produce speakers who are more precise about the nature of their knowledge. English has no grammatical evidentiality. We can express it, but we don't have to. This may make us less careful about the difference between I saw and I heard. Imagine if English required that distinction in every sentence. Would we think about knowledge differently? Language and music are so closely related that some linguists think they have the same evolutionary origin. The Piraha language uses pitch and rhythm to encode meaning. The spoken language can be hummed, whistled, or sung. Many tonal languages, Mandarin, Cantonese, Yoruba, Vietnamese, use pitch not for emotion but to distinguish words. Mandarin speakers process the tones of their language in a different brain region than non-tonal language speakers process the same sounds. Language shapes the brain. The languages you speak physically alter your neural architecture. Bilinguals develop denser gray matter in language areas than monolinguals. Speaking 2 languages exercises neural networks monolinguals don't develop. Bilingualism delays the onset of Alzheimer's symptoms by an average of 4 to 5 years. 2 languages, 2 cognitive reserves. Sign languages are perhaps the most dramatic proof that language is not sound. Its structure. There are over 300 distinct sign languages. Not universal. Not pantomime. Each is a fully grammatical natural language. Sign languages activate the same brain regions as spoken languages. The brain doesn't care about the modality. It responds to structure. Nicaraguan Sign Language arose spontaneously in the 1970s when deaf children were first brought together in schools. Within a generation, a full grammatical sign language had emerged from nothing. Children created grammar that the first generation hadn't had. This is the most direct demonstration we have that language is a biological imperative. Given any community, children will invent it. Back to the extinction. Because the pace is accelerating and the pattern matters. The forces killing languages are global: urbanization, economic pressure, dominant national languages in education, social stigma. When a language becomes associated with poverty or backwardness in people's minds, parents stop speaking it to children. Within a generation, it's gone. Language shift is often not a choice. It's survival. The last speakers are often people who were punished for speaking their language in school. The last speaker of a language carries an unbearable weight. The entire history, the entire cognitive universe of a people, in one person. When Marie Smith Jones, the last speaker of Ayak, died in 2008, a language that had existed for at least 10,000 years ended with her last breath. But some communities are fighting back. Language nests. Immersion schools. Elder programs. Radio stations broadcasting in dying tongues. The Maori of New Zealand took their language from 25% fluency to over 50% in 2 generations through coordinated revival. Technology is now helping. Apps. Audio archives. AI that can help reconstruct languages from partial records. There is a form of language that predates spoken language. The body. Gesture. Expression. Paul Ekman's research in the 1960s showed that 6 basic facial expressions are universal across all cultures: happiness, sadness, disgust, anger, fear, and surprise. The universality of these expressions suggests they are evolutionary, not cultural. The emotional body language predates spoken language. Prosody, the rhythm, tone, and melody of speech, carries meaning that the words themselves don't contain. Babies understand prosody before they understand words. They respond to tone of voice months before they can decode vocabulary. This suggests that the emotional music of language may be more ancient than the words it carries. Across cultures, mothers use the same exaggerated, high-pitched melodic speech with babies. Called motherese or child-directed speech. It's cross-cultural and instinctive. Let's go deeper into what language does to the brain. Because it literally changes the organ. Broca's area in the left frontal lobe handles language production, the making of grammatical sentences. Wernicke's area in the left temporal lobe handles comprehension, the understanding of language heard. When these areas are damaged, patients get specific language disorders. Broca's aphasia, can understand but can't produce fluent speech. Wernicke's aphasia, fluent speech but no comprehension. These double dissociations prove that language is not a single faculty. It's a collection of specialized systems working in coordination. Polyglots, people who speak many languages, have been found to have structurally different brains than monolinguals. More gray matter. Different white matter connectivity. Learning a second language as an adult creates new neural pathways. The brain builds new architecture to support the second system. The critical period for language acquisition runs from birth to about 12 years. After that, the brain's plasticity for language is reduced, though never completely gone. A classic thought experiment in linguistics: can you think without language? Many people report that their clearest thinking happens in images, not words. Spatial and visual thinkers solve problems without language. Temple Grandin, the autism researcher, says she thinks in pictures, not words. Her thinking processes are pre-linguistic and primarily visual. Musicians describe thinking in music. Mathematicians describe thinking in structural relationships. Not words, but structured meaning. The cognitive linguist George Lakoff argues all thought is metaphorical, built on bodily, sensory experience that language then maps. I'm feeling down. Things are looking up. She's on top of the world. The physical experience of gravity is the metaphor for emotional states in virtually every language. Language may not be the origin of thought. It may be the packaging that allows thought to be transmitted, stored, and accumulated across generations. One of the most profound things language does is extend memory beyond the biological limits of a single brain. Before writing, oral tradition was the hard drive of human knowledge. Stories, songs, genealogies, and laws encoded in language that could be stored in brains and transmitted across generations. The Iliad and the Odyssey were oral poems passed down for centuries before Homer recorded them. The meter of the poems, the dactylic hexameter, was a memory technology. The Vedas of India were transmitted orally for at least 1,000 years before they were written down. In some traditions, they are still transmitted this way. Memory techniques like the method of loci, the memory palace, work by converting information into language and spatial narrative. Indigenous Australian songlines function as a vast language-based GPS. The song encodes the landscape can be navigated by singing the song. Language is how humans beat the biological constraint of one brain, one lifetime. Every written book, every oral tradition, every story told around a fire was information escaping individual mortality. Translation is one of the oldest human arts. And one of the most humbling. Every translation is an act of interpretation. The translator must choose which meaning to carry across, and cannot carry all of them. The Italian proverb, tradutor, traditor. Translator, traitor. Every translation betrays something of the original. When Homer's Iliad is translated into English, the specific sound patterns that Greek warriors would have heard, the patterns that made it memorable enough to transmit orally, are gone. The Bible has been translated over 700 times into English alone. Each translation making different choices about which meaning to carry, which to leave behind. Translation reveals what is unique in each language. The things that resist translation are the things that most reveal what a language is. The most translated book in history is the Bible. The second is Pinocchio. A children's story about lying translated into 300 languages. Something in that story speaks to every human language. Language has always been a tool of power. Those who control the language control the reality that language creates. The deliberate suppression of indigenous languages was colonial policy on every continent. Not incidentally. Deliberately. Kill the Indian, save the man, was the explicit slogan of U.S. Indian boarding schools from the 1870s. These schools forcibly removed children and punished them for speaking their mother tongues. The same policy operated in Australia's stolen generations, Canada's residential schools, the British colonization of Ireland, and the suppression of Welsh and Breton. Controlling the language of law, of education, of commerce is controlling the power. Those who must operate in a second language are structurally disadvantaged. George Orwell's Newspeak in 1984 was a warning: if you eliminate the words for freedom, can you still think about freedom? Language shapes what is thinkable. Every language that is suppressed is a power act. Every language that is revived is an act of resistance. Where did language come from? This is one of the great unsolved questions of science. And the answers are stranger than you might expect. Language leaves no direct fossil record. Speech itself doesn't preserve. We can only infer its history from skeletal evidence and behavioral clues. The hyoid bone, the bone in your throat that supports your tongue, is found in Neanderthals in a position identical to modern humans. They could likely speak. Broca's area, the brain region for language production, shows its imprint on ancient skulls going back 2 million years. Language-related brain structures are very old. The FOXP2 gene is essential for the fine motor control of speech. Humans and Neanderthals share the modern version. Chimpanzees have an ancient version. Children with mutations in FOXP2 have severe difficulty producing and understanding language. It's sometimes called the language gene, though that's an oversimplification. The leading theories: language evolved from gesture, manual communication came first, from music, the melodies of emotion became words, or from general cognitive capacity for symbolism. Chimpanzees can learn hundreds of signs in American Sign Language. Some have combined signs in novel ways. They seem to be at the threshold of language without crossing it. The crossing of that threshold, whatever it was the most consequential cognitive event in human history. Language is spoken. Writing is technology. And the two have a much shorter history than the speech it records. Writing was invented independently at least 3 times, in Mesopotamia around 3400 BCE, in China around 1200 BCE, and in Mesoamerica around 900 BCE. Writing does not record language. It is a separate cognitive technology. Writing systems are interfaces between spoken language and visual marks. Alphabets were invented only once. The Phoenician alphabet, around 1050 BCE, is the ancestor of virtually every alphabet in the world: Arabic, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and all their descendants. Before the alphabet, writing required thousands of signs. Cuneiform had over 1,000. Chinese has tens of thousands of characters. The alphabet was the compression that made mass literacy possible. Some languages have no writing system. They exist only in sound. This doesn't make them less complex, it makes them less recorded. The last speakers of languages without writing carry an urgent responsibility. Their death is the end of all records. Language is not just a tool. It's an identity. It's the self. Research shows that bilinguals report feeling like slightly different people in each of their languages. Some concepts exist only in one language. When you speak that language, you can think and feel things that are literally inaccessible in your other tongue. The Japanese concept ame, an emotional state of pleasant dependence, like a child's trust in a parent, has no English equivalent. English speakers experience it but can't precisely name it. The Welsh hiraeth, a longing for home combined with grief for what's lost and the knowledge you can't return. 4 English words for an emotion that deserves one. When indigenous people were forced to abandon their languages in colonial schools, they reported losing access to certain emotions, memories, and ways of being. Language is not just how we communicate. It's part of who we are. Its loss is a kind of selfhood erasure. Humans have also tried to create new languages from scratch. This tells us something important about what language is. Esperanto was invented in 1887 by Ludwig Lazarus Zamenhof, a Polish ophthalmologist. He hoped it would become a universal second language that would reduce conflict. Today, Esperanto has between 1 and 2 million speakers. It has native speakers, children raised in it from birth. It has developed idioms, slang, and cultural expressions that Zamenhof never invented. Klingon, invented by Mark Okrand for Star Trek in 1984, now has a dedicated community of speakers and has been used to perform Shakespeare. These invented languages reveal something essential: language is not just about communication. It's about community. People adopt languages for belonging. The constructed language always becomes something its creator didn't plan for, because community takes over. Language belongs to its speakers, not its inventor. This is the ultimate truth about language. It cannot be owned. It cannot be controlled. It lives in the mouths and minds of its speakers. Throughout history, when different peoples needed to trade, they developed bridge languages. Linguistic compromises. Lingua francas. Latin served as the lingua franca of Europe for over 1,000 years after Rome fell. Scholars, clergy, and diplomats wrote in Latin long after it had no native speakers. Arabic became the lingua franca of the medieval Islamic world, from Spain to Southeast Asia. Scientists and scholars in Baghdad, Cairo, and Samarkand all wrote in Arabic regardless of their mother tongue. The Silk Road required countless interpreters. Merchants who traded from Rome to China might need to pass through 5 or 6 language communities. Swahili developed as a trade language on the East African coast, blending Bantu grammar with Arabic vocabulary. It's now the most widely spoken language in sub-Saharan Africa. Pidgins arise when speakers of different languages need to communicate with no shared language. They're simplified, cobbled together, initially restricted in grammar. But when children are raised speaking a pidgin, something remarkable happens. They add grammar. They expand vocabulary. The pidgin becomes a Creole, a full, natural language. Haitian Creole, Talk Pisin, Louisiana Creole, languages that emerged from contact and became fully complex mother tongues within 1 or 2 generations. Today, English is the world's dominant lingua franca. But it's being absorbed, transformed, and localized everywhere it goes. Singlish, Nigerian English, Indian English, Jamaican English, each is English transformed by contact with local languages. Each is a new language being born. Language is the container that holds culture. When it's gone, the culture it held becomes inaccessible. Oral histories encoded in indigenous languages contain ecological knowledge accumulated over thousands of years of living in a place. The Cherokee language has a verb form that expresses action done for the sake of future generations. English has no equivalent grammatical structure. Hawaiian cosmogony, the creation stories that encode the relationship between humans, land, and ocean, exists fully only in Hawaiian. Translation loses the resonance between words that are also names for natural phenomena. Traditional ecological knowledge, accumulated over millennia of careful observation of specific places, is encoded in the languages that evolved in those places. Songlines of Aboriginal Australia are songs that encode detailed topographic information across thousands of kilometers. The landscape is memorized through music in language. The loss of the language means losing the container that holds all of this. Not just the words, but the worldview those words created. One of the most fascinating linguistic phenomena is code switching. The practice of alternating between languages within a single conversation. Bilinguals don't pick one language and stick with it. They switch because each language does different things better. Spanish-English bilingual speakers in the U.S. switch between languages more than 100 times in an hour of conversation, studies have found. Code switching is grammatically systematic. The switches follow predictable rules. It's not random mixing. It's a third linguistic system. For multilingual people, thinking in multiple languages simultaneously is not confusion. It's a cognitive expansion of the available tools. As you drift toward sleep, think about the conversation you just had. It happened in English. One language. One way of carving the world. Somewhere tonight, someone is speaking a language with words for things you've never thought about. Experiences you've never had names for. Someone is using navigation words that embed an entire worldview about space. Someone is describing time as something you walk into, not away from. These are not just cultural differences. They are different instruments for playing the same world. And when one goes silent, a particular music is lost. Something that has no equivalent in any other tongue. We are made of language. We think in it. We dream in it. We love in it. And somewhere in the 7,000 languages still alive, there are descriptions of the world that no English speaker has ever been able to think. Let that sit with you as you sleep. The world is larger than any single language can hold. Rest now. And when you dream, your language will take you somewhere only it can go. As you fall deeper into rest, think about the word you learned tonight that doesn't translate. Sodade. Hiraeth. Mono no aware. Schadenfreude. Ame. These words name things you felt but couldn't describe in your own tongue. The feeling was real. The language just hadn't named it for you yet. Every language you learn gives you access to new corners of human experience. You can feel things more precisely. Notice what was invisible before. Tonight, somewhere in the world, the last speakers of dying languages are sleeping. Carrying in their dreams words that have no equivalent anywhere else. Words for plant medicines that may never be discovered by science. Words for weather patterns that climate scientists don't know how to describe. Words for emotional states that no therapist has named. The world has 7,000 languages. Each one is a civilization of thought. We are in the middle of losing half of them in a single century. But each one that is documented, recorded, taught to children, used in schools and media, each one that survives, is a way of seeing reality that humans keep. Sleep is when the brain consolidates language. When words heard during the day are moved to long-term memory. When you sleep, you are quite literally learning to speak. Language learners who sleep after studying consistently outperform those who stay awake. Sleep is not just about body rest. It's about language rest. Language learning. As you drift toward sleep, you carry the language of your ancestors. Their words shaped how you see, what you feel, what you notice and what you miss. You are the living archive of a language. As long as you speak it, it lives. And tonight, even in your dreams, it is alive in you. Sleep now. The world has many languages. And tonight, in sleep, yours will dream you into the place only it can take you. Consider the simple word you. It seems so clear. But in Japanese, there are over a dozen words for you, each one encoding the relationship between speaker and listener. You is not simple. In Mandarin, kinship terms are extraordinarily precise. There are different words for your father's older brother, your father's younger brother, your mother's brother. The family is mapped in the language. English simply says uncle for all of them. English simplifies where other languages make distinctions that the culture considered important enough to name. What you name, you perceive. What you don't name, you see more dimly. Language is a precision instrument for the aspects of reality a culture decided mattered most. As you drift into sleep, the language that lives in you goes with you. The metaphors that organize your world. The words that have no equivalent elsewhere. You carry an entire way of being human. Not the only way. But one way, irreplaceable and yours. Sleep now, in the language of your dreams. You are the living keeper of a way of seeing the world. And tonight, that knowledge rests with you.